What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Now today I have an unboxing and first impressions on the New Balance Tekela V5, and now this is an updated version from the previous model, the V4 Plus, and it's actually a redesign, so there's a lot of differences coming from the V4, and today we're just going to check it out. And this is the box. The box is pretty beat up, as you guys can see, but there is the tag. I did go half a size up, and I'll let you guys know why later on the on-feet portion. But here we have the boots in this very bright colorway, this neon yellow, and yeah, this is very bright. This is the same colorway that came out with the Furon V8 as well as the New Balance 442 the 2 Plus, or whatever it's called, the high-end model that also has like a synthetic leather. And yeah, as you guys can see, they did make some changes to this boot. But yeah, this colorway, I can't go wrong with a full like highlighter colorway. I actually don't mind these boots. I like bright boots sometimes. But let me know what you guys think of this colorway down below in the comments. Alright guys, so the Tekela V4 Plus was a really good boot. One of the most comfortable boots out in the market. The upper was super soft. You could just put them on and just play with them. No break-in time needed. And even though the V4 was a very comfortable boot, it just lacked responsiveness. Like that hyponet upper was just a little too soft. There wasn't really any structure, and so it just lacked performance. This time around in the Tekela V5, they changed the upper from a hyponet to a dynamic touch tech upper. And so it is now a synthetic upper, no longer a knit upper. And first impressions, like the upper is actually pretty soft, pretty pliable. It doesn't feel like stiff whatsoever. It's actually pretty soft. And you guys can see here in right in this section, when you push it down, it does have like that little bit of like wrinkle effect, which is actually pretty nice. The rest of the upper doesn't have that, but like right here in this part of the toe, you guys can see it does have a little bit of wrinkle. So kind of like a synthetic leather or just like actual leather. But yeah, these actually feel pretty soft, pretty good. Not as soft as a hypoknit upper, but it's still pretty soft for a synthetic. Like I actually like the way these feel straight out of the box. I'm guessing they're just gonna get softer as you play with them. So on the upper, you also get this little bit of texture, these dots. Hopefully you guys can hear that. But yeah, it is pretty significant in terms like the texture in hand. Like you could really feel like how rough it is. And this kind of reminds me like the texture that we do get from the Adidas F50, like with the sprint web texture, and it creates more of a rough texture instead of a grippy texture. So this is kind of similar to that, and I think it's gonna feel very similar, where it doesn't provide like a sticky feel, but just like a tactile, like gritty feel. The upper itself doesn't feel like overly like padded. It doesn't have like an internal padded liner whatsoever. But the upper itself does have some thickness to it, so you guys can see right here like how it starts from the laces. Hopefully it focuses. Like that line, it just feels has a little bit more like padding to it, like the upper itself. Like I said, it's not overly padded, like it doesn't like sink in, but I feel like it's just going to provide a little bit of like a padded feel, not like a thick padded feel, just like a slight like padded feel, if that makes any sense. Here in the lacing system, it's basically the same. The material in the knit did change in terms of how it's knitted. It's a little bit more open. It still feels pretty good, feels pretty premium. And then moving on to the heel shape looks kind of the same. They did add way more padding this time around and more padding here on top, which is nice. And they no longer have that little bit of extra material here in the heel. And so for me on the Tekela V4 Plus, I did have a little bit of rubbing here in the beginning, and I did get a small blister, nothing crazy, but I did get some rubbing here, and it was just digging into my heel, which I found uncomfortable. And it went away a little bit, but I still felt that at times. And so I had to wear grip socks with like more padding in like the back heel area and just grips along the heel so it wouldn't like rub and like dig into my heel. Um, so that was like the only issue of the Tekela before for me. I know some people also experienced that, other people didn't. But this time around, there's a lot more padding, especially here, like on top. You guys can see, hopefully, you guys can see that, like more padding up here, and it's a really nice soft padding, microfiber like suede material, and it's like padding like right here, and then in the bottom here, it's mostly just a normal like material. Like the suede there isn't much padding, but the padding is like right there and like more up here as well. So I feel like it's gonna have a nice locked in heel sensation. Like the heel lockdown on the V4 was actually pretty good. My heel didn't move whatsoever. I just got that little bit of like pressure point right here on top, which honestly I think this boot fixes just because there isn't really any extra material. Maybe here the stitching, but like I said, it's actually pretty soft and padded. And also this time around, they did like make the heel counter just a little bit lower around here, and so there isn't really much structure, which is really nice. So your heel might be able to go push back a little bit, and there won't be too much pressure here in the back heel of this portion, which is nice just because I feel like that also kind of was the reason why I dug into my heel and created that blister. But this time around, it is really soft. All right, so moving on with the sole plate, this is the only thing that remains the same. It's pretty flexible here in the forefoot, nice and stiff in the midfoot, all conical studs, and you have these like additional blades on the side. Now, for me, I use these on AG, and I didn't really find an issue. I didn't feel like I got stuck. But if you play more of a shallow AG, I would just wouldn't recommend these. I feel like my AG pitch is pretty nice, and so I don't really get stuck. I don't feel them all that much, really. But yeah, if you have like a really bad AG feel, don't use these. Obviously, on firm ground pitches, I'm guessing they're gonna have a good amount of bite. But yeah, this sole plate, I actually really like in the previous model. I don't mind it. Still a decent sole plate. It's pretty flexible and it goes well with the upper, so I actually don't mind the sole plate. So with the insole, it is more of this like nice like soft foam. You guys can see it's a little bit on the thicker side, but it's super soft. It's nice and padded. You guys can see ortholite foam there, so it's nice and spongy. The liner here isn't their typical like grippy liner. They do have like this like liner that has just a subtle grip. This is just a regular mesh liner, so I'm surprised that they don't include it. Maybe it's just this colorway. I know sometimes with some colorways, like special edition colorways, they don't have that like liner in the insole. So I guess this is one of those like times. Maybe in regular colorways they do have that liner, but we'll just wait and see. All right, so now we'll move on to an on feet portion, and I'll let you guys know how they fit and feel on feet. All right, guys. So here we have the Tekela V5s on feet, and the first thing I noticed that the upper is actually pretty soft and pliable. And as I was setting my lights and stuff like that, they're just getting even softer, and they're kind of molding to the shape of my foot. Just because the midfoot or like this area here just felt a little snug, but now they just feel comfortable. And so that's actually really nice that this upper kind of molds to the shape of your foot, just like a leather, but I don't think it's gonna overstretch. So it probably does have more structure, which is a good thing, just because the V4 just lacked a little bit of structure. Also, the shape is pretty similar to the V4. They just fit a little bit more snug, just because the hypo upper just I feel like that stretched out a little bit more, and these just fit snug, which is a nice thing. And also, and the V4 I did go with the wide fit variant. This time around, this is the standard width, so this is not wide feet. And as you guys can see, they actually fit me pretty nicely. They wrap my foot nice. They're hugging it in a nice way. They're not super tight. And yeah, so if you have wide feet, I actually think going just a normal one is not a bad option. If you have super wide feet, then yeah, go with the wide fit variant. But the standard version is pretty accommodating, I would say. Something else that I noticed is that the toe box is still pretty much the same, where it's just really low in volume. So personally, I went half a size up, and for me, that's a perfect size, just because I have a little bit of space, but just because the volume is so low, my toes would be crushed if I went true to size. So half a size up for me is the perfect fit. I feel like if you guys like your cleats super tight, then go true to size. But if you guys want just a little bit of wiggle space or something just a little bit more comfortable, then I would recommend going half a size up, just because you're gonna have just that little bit of extra space. But that little bit of extra space, just because the volume is so low, I feel like you won't really notice it all that much. The heel, I can kind of feel like it's not digging in, but it is hugging my heel pretty tight, especially with that padding. But it's not uncomfortable. It's just something that I gotta get used to. But I can really feel that padding, and honestly, they feel really good. They don't feel like they're gonna like give me a blister. They feel a little bit softer, so that is a good thing. That it's just a little bit softer in the heel. And yeah, this upper is just kind of molding to the shape of my foot. It actually feels really good. They feel really comfortable. I'm not gonna lie. Obviously, I think breaking them in further, they're just gonna get softer. But straight out of the box, like I feel like I could play with these with no issues. I don't feel any pressure points. But yeah, I'm really impressed by this upper. and I'll leave you guys with my final thoughts. Alright guys, overall I'm pretty excited to try the Tekela V5 on pitch. Like the upper is super soft, they're really comfortable, they fit well. Like even though they changed the hyponet upper, I think this just feels a little bit more structured, but still has that nice soft and pliable feel. So performance wise, it may be better. The heel I actually really like. I don't have that pressure point, and so hopefully I don't get any blisters, and hopefully like it just works with my heel. But yeah, but first impressions, I did take Halo V5. You know, it's a pretty solid boot. Obviously, we'll have to wait to see how they perform, and I'll do my best to upload a playtest as soon as I can. So that's it for the video. If you guys do have any questions on the Tekela V5, just leave them down below in the comments. I'll do my best to answer them. If you guys did enjoy this video, make sure you leave a like, make sure to subscribe, and hit the bell notifications so you're notified for the playtest of this boot. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.